Hello and welcome. Today I'm doing things a little bit different and I'm recording this in the morning. Yesterday I was out doing some more yard work. I did have my video up from the work that I had done the week before. I posted that video yesterday. The work that I did yesterday after that will be up next week. And I'm a little achy today, but it was wonderful to be out in the sun and enjoying the bird song. So I decided to make the video this morning for my live stream, and then it'll be up at 3 p.m., the usual time. And I'll be there. I just won't be having to talk and wiggle around during that live stream. So today we're taking a look at cube number 3 of my TBR books. We've gone through cube number 1, and this one tends to change quite a bit. It's where I'll typically pull books and wiggle things around. We went over cube number 2, which was mainly classics that I need to get to. I still have to finish Sleepy Hollow. And then there were other books as well, like Crop Circles, Dragonology, and a Cornelius Van Helsing book. So those are something else waiting. Today we'll be talking about cube number 3, which as you can see is empty. I have all the books here beside me. It's just easier to have them, show them, and then put them back in. On this particular stand, cube number 4 is all my coloring books. And as you can see, I have 1 or 10 or more that I need to start getting back to. So we'll be talking about my TBR cube number 3 today, but those aren't all the books waiting. There are some on my stand over here that have yet to be read, but I just have them in by subject. If you've seen my videos where I'm recording in my workroom, I have a number of books on that stand that are still waiting to be read. And of course, if you've seen my last 2 book haul videos, that list of books to read is growing. So eventually I'll get there, but I'm also one of those people who I read by what I'm feeling that day. So this is my first year really being involved with BookTube and getting involved with those reading events, which has been fun. And I'll talk a bit about the Book Trek event in a little while. But typically I'll read by what I feel or what I need that day. So if it's a bit of a challenging day, I may pick up a science fiction. I may pick up a Gary Zukav, one of the other inspirational books that I've mentioned on my 28 days video that I posted a couple days ago. It just really depends on what's going on with me that day and what I feel like reading. So some books like Probe, I started on Friday during a reading sprint at Ginger Bibliophile. I didn't pick it up for a day and a bit. And then Monday, I picked it up again and stayed up until 12:30 in the morning to finish it because I really did enjoy the story and I wanted to know how it ended. There are other books like the Aleister Crowley Moonchild, which is a fictional read. It's interesting. I'm enjoying it. It just isn't the same, I have to know how it ends right now type of book. And for me, that'll also depend, again, on how I'm feeling, what's going on. So even with books like Seed of the Soul, I might read this in a day and stay up and start highlighting and making notes. And other times it can take me a week to get through it because I pick it up when I need to read certain things. Let me know in the comments, either on the side as you're watching this if you're here, or if you're on Team Rewatch, which I always appreciate. Thank you so much. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you follow a set type of reading schedule? Do you have a TBR list? Do you read by mood and just find you pick up what you need on that particular day? Whether it's a brain break from the cuckoo cuckoo of the everyday world, or whether it's a challenging day and you need some inspiration and have that type of book. So that's a bit about my reading. Obviously, I don't do TBR videos other than going through these sections of books that I have because I really don't have a TBR. I mean, in January 2022, I set the goal of reading my personal library. Seemed pretty easy at that time as I had purchased very few books in the months leading up to that. And lately, my thrift store and I have become best buddies, and I've acquired probably well over 30, if not 40 books since January 2024. So thank goodness for 50% discount books, $1 books, and just amazing finds even at the regular prices, because most of the books are typically under $5, which is a great find when you get them in excellent condition like this and hardback. Certainly wouldn't be able to do that at Indigo or other stores. So on to what else is in that cube. First, my Edgar Allan Poe Complete Tales and Poems. I have yet to start this copy. During Horror Mayhem, I did read 2 stories by Edgar Allan Poe, but they were in one of the other collections that I'll be mentioning in a bit. So this book has also patiently been waiting for probably close to 15 years. And I used to have it displayed with a neat crow on top of it. It's not a raven, it's a crow. But I figure with Tiki and her constant adventures of getting up and about, I had to put the crow in a safe place, and Edgar now sits on a shelf. Another book, actually 2 books that have been waiting for well over 15 years, this might actually be close to 20, is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The Complete Sherlock Holmes. So I have volume 1 and 2. I've seen a number of Sherlock Holmes movies, shows. I enjoyed watching Benedict Cumberbatch. I've seen, and I wish I could think of his name, it's a Sherlock Holmes series, watched it on Prime. I'll have to look it up later. But I haven't actually read Sherlock Holmes, same as The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Just read those. I enjoyed those reads. So I am looking forward to getting to Sherlock Holmes. I'm just not sure when that'll be. It may not be waiting until March Mystery Madness next year. Again, I don't know. It'll be when I'm led to read it. Now, these would be a reread. I have the Iliad of Homer and the Odyssey of Homer. Yes, I'm that nerd. I read these back in high school when I saw the hardback copies. I think this is when I used to belong to Book of the Month Club years ago. So I definitely wanted to have a copy on hand as I enjoy reading about mythology. I enjoyed the read of both of these. These are translated with an introduction by Richmond Lattimore. So I definitely want to revisit those at some point. Two other books that I've had waiting, and these were actually from the Indigo discount section because I did find some amazing finds there for great prices. This is By Blood We Live. It's an anthology of vampire stories. Some of the authors include Kelly Armstrong, L.A. Banks, who I haven't read, but I've seen that name. Tanith Lee, I think, is another author. I've seen her name. Stephen King. This, of course, doesn't have Salem's Lot, so it must be one of his short stories, and many others. This is edited by John Joseph Adams. I'm almost partway done. I started reading this, might have been last October, because October is when I typically get into a lot of the vampire stories. Definitely H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. If you've seen any of those videos, my one yearly tradition is listening to War of the Worlds, the musical, narrated by Richard Burton. The singers are phenomenal. The story is great. So I may have started this in October, and as you can see, I still need to get back to that. The other anthology that I have is The Way of the Wizard. There's a number of different story authors here. Peter S. Beagle, Marion Zimmer Bradley. Okay, now I'm curious because I just mentioned her in my last book haul. I've picked up one of her books. George R.R. Martin. Saw that name when I was going through the science fiction section looking for Star Trek books. This is also edited by John Joseph Adams. Now, I haven't started this one yet, but definitely looking forward to some great reads there. And that is the back section. I'm going to just push them in a bit. The next set, I love that these cubes are roomy enough that I can put 2 rows of books there. This is How the World is Made, the story of creation according to sacred geometry. And I also mentioned that in my last book haul video. I have other books that talk about sacred geometry involving pyramids and such. I'm trying to think of the authors. Definitely Graham Hancock. I don't think that's a term that Zacharias Sitchin uses in his works, but I do know there are a number of different authors that I've read that definitely talk about that. May have even come up. I just started a second book by Eric von Daniken the other day. So that comes up quite a bit. It's a subject I find fascinating. I love the cover of this book. And this is by John Mitchell with Alan Brown. So it's one of those I just haven't gotten to it. They've got some amazing pictures in the back. Now am I going to say it right? I know the name of it. I just want to, they don't have it here. Fibonacci. If you've looked into sacred geometry, you'll know definitely what I'm talking about. The snail shell and the way the numbers go. I know the person who came up with it. The name starts with F, but it's not described here. Okay, this is definitely going to be a fun read. There's so many different shapes. And not only do I find this fascinating in terms of trying to understand the universe and sacred geometry, but there's amazing crafting ideas that I get from looking at this as well. So for instance, these diagrams make me think of the spirograph set that I have. And if you're a bit older, you'll know what I'm talking about, the different circles, and you put the pen, and it came up with all kinds of cool shapes. So I definitely need to get in. Oh, here we go. Finally, the name. Fibonacci's approximation. Woohoo! So we found that. This reminds me of a lot of the different labyrinth pictures I've seen. But of course, it also makes me think of the cycle of the moon from full to, see? Things typically connect. All right, I definitely need to put that at the front of my reading list. The other books that I have there, Secret Wisdom, Occult Societies, and Arcane Knowledge Through the Ages. This is a photo that if you look into older civilizations, that type of information, you've probably seen this before, where the belief was the earth had a protective cover around it, and then you looked into the galaxy, universe. This is by Ruth Clydesdale. Very much interested in reading this. This will definitely tie in with the Da Vinci Code, various other readings that I'm doing. There's philosophers, gold makers, as in the alchemists. And I always find that a bit funny because from the different things, at least that I've read and I understand, alchemy wasn't so much about the material turning metals into gold as it was about inner knowing and self-reflection. And the philosopher's stone was coming to that realization. So let me know in the comments down below, or as I say, if you're watching this afternoon, in the comment section here, what are your thoughts on alchemy? Was it literally just that basics, the way some people interpret it, metals trying to generate and make gold? Or was it more the way I think, that alchemy was about inner work and developing ourselves? So as Maslow would have called it, self-actualization. But this will be an interesting read. As I say, ties in with a number of my other subjects. This one, which I actually should have up on my cube, which I'll be going through, as in resource and reference books, so not necessarily something I'll read front to back. But this one I may. It's Vampires, Encounters with the Undead. This is edited and with commentary by David J. Scull. I definitely enjoy reading about Vlad Tepes, Dracula, anything vampires, because it has to do with not only old beliefs and ideas from various parts of the world. There's some great vampire stories out there. I enjoy the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. I just picked up 2 more books from that set. I have Blood and Gold that's on my TBR waiting to be read. So it's a bit funny because with the Vampire Chronicles, I used to have up to Memnoch the Devil in hard copies, and then for some reason, silly me, unhauled them. When I decided to start reading Anne Rice again, I think it was a year and a half ago, So I got Interview with the Vampire again. And then my library thankfully had all but one copy of the series. So I still need to find Blood Canticle because the library doesn't have it. But I did end up, and I didn't read them in order. So I ended up reading Prince Lestat, which I enjoyed because it goes through the whole Vampire Chronicles. It gives you the backstories of the vampires. So you could even read it as a standalone without having read the rest of the series. I think it's 11 or 12 other books because there may actually be one now after Prince Lestat, if I remember correctly. So I had planned to only buy those two books. I knew I may have to buy Blood Canticle at some point. Still haven't come across it as I've been looking through different things at the thrift store. But when I came across Blood and Gold, it was on half price day. I figured you can't go wrong there. And then I just recently got two more Anne Rice, The Body Thief, which I know I'll probably read again because I really enjoyed the character David and Aaron. They'll both come up in that. And that whole Talamasca deal makes me wonder about different things. So I knew I'd read that one again. And the other one I picked up, I'm suddenly having a mind fart, but I know it belongs in the Vampire Chronicles. Definitely ties in with the vampires. I'm curious to see what this is about. And of course, it will only cover up to the date of publication of this. But no doubt there will be some fascinating information in here. And I also have, I think I talked to in The Idiot's Guide with Vampires, and I've already read them. So they're in a book waiting for notes. In Search of Dracula, and there's a brief history of vampires. So a lot of information that I still need to get to before I put together my episode on Vlad Tepes. The other books that I have here, didn't quite put them in order. Here we go. Supernatural Short Stories. This is edited by Joshua Perry. It was one of my Indigo finds. I haven't started this one yet. It definitely has authors who I know. We have, now, here's another fascinating one I want to read. John William Polidori, The Vampire. And I've come across both that author's name and this particular story reading about vampires when I was looking into Vlad and factual information, as well as the development of the vampires in literature. And I'm trying to think now, Polidori wasn't the first one to write the vampire. Ties in with Mary Shelley. And why can't I think of the author she was involved with? And I think he's actually the one who had started writing The Vampire, and Polidori continued on with it and published it. Then there's a number of names I don't know here. Guy de Maupassant, Ambrose Bierce. So I'll have a chance to meet some new authors. Bram Stoker, definitely know him. Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, definitely remember him from Carmilla, which I just recently read. That again came up in a number of things about vampires. So 2 short stories here by him I'm looking forward to. So some new authors and some revisits with other authors I know I've enjoyed. Another book is horror short stories, and again, from the Indigo discount table, edited by Joanna Blythe. This also contained a number of authors who I had heard of before. This is the book that I started during Horror Mayhem, and I'd read 2 of the stories by Edgar Allan Poe, 2 stories by H.P. Lovecraft. And if you've just seen my latest book haul, I found another book on H.P. Lovecraft, but it isn't his stories, it's actually about him. So I'm looking forward to reading that. This book also has Guy de Maupassant, so that will be interesting. Hopefully, I enjoy those. Also has Ambrose Pierce. So again, new to me authors, Bram Stoker and William Hope Hodgson, new to me and is in both of those sets. So I've had these books for a little bit because I haven't been to Indigo in, I can't even remember if I've been there in 2024. I think I went once. Yes, I did, because I was looking for a particular book that tied in with whatever spiral I was on at that time. And what I found comical, I guess, is before you used to be able to order books and pick them up at Indigo, used to be called Chapters. So when I asked about putting in an order for the book, because like I say, it's something I wanted, it tied in with my studies. Basically, I got well, you can order it online and have it delivered here. My thought walking out of the store was, I can order it through Amazon and have it delivered to my door, which means I don't need to come in here. Just lost a customer who had been there for decades. But this is why online shopping is doing in some of these in-person stores. Anyway, How to Hunt Ghosts isn't so much a TBR. I'm wondering why I've got him in there. But this is by Joshua P. Warren. I know I've read this and I need to go through it and make notes again. I've mentioned this book in some of my videos about paranormal researchers. It's a fascinating read if you're into ghost hunting, equipment, ideas, theories about what these things are. It is a book that I recommend. I don't agree with him about being able to charge for doing that, but that's just my biased opinion. This is from 2003. So even with this book, the equipment they're mentioning is going to be outdated because there have been if you watch paranormal videos or even watch the debunker channels, there have been so many different developments and things that people now use that this author wouldn't have back in the day. But it's still a good read in terms of what kinds of things were they using back then. But like I say, there have also been changes. I personally enjoy reading some of the older books, especially the older ghost stories books. Many of them are from the 1990s, some now into the 2000s. But I enjoy reading it because not only do they share about their own experiences, but again, they talk about the areas where they go, learn a bit of history, not just about ghosts and the paranormal, but about different countries and locations as well. This next book, and I'm willing to bet it's waited at least 10 years or so. It's in immaculate condition, which in my world means I haven't read it because, yes, I'm one of those bad people who cracks the spine of a book. I write, I highlight, I make notes, because to me, for the longest time, I didn't very often, hi Tiki, But to me, when I'm reading, unless it's fiction, I'm reading for information and education and things that I can incorporate into everyday life or making connections with other things that I've read. This particular book, From Natural Philosophy to the Enigma of Dark Matter, the Story of Physics. This, of course, and this is by Anne Rooney. Why does that name sound familiar? Okay, now I have to start looking around at different things. This will be a fascinating read. I've read a bit about quantum physics. I certainly would not attempt to try and explain it to anyone else. It isn't that it's, super hard to comprehend or complex. I'm just not sure I would explain it properly. So I don't. It will be the same with the story of physics. When I was in high school, I never took physics. I thankfully got my science credits other ways, as in biology. And even when I did my degree in university, one of my electives, oddly enough, was chemistry. I'm no whiz kid with math. I've always said that. But somehow chemistry totally made sense to me. Maybe it's because I'm always looking for connections in my life and my reading and how things go together. So that always made more sense to me than being able to figure out numbers, which to other people is much easier and they can put it together. And that's why we all enjoy reading different books. And I love hearing about things that other people are reading that I may not have read. So it's always enjoyable. But I will definitely get to this at some point. Actually, that is now moving over to my book truck pile, because part of that event is not only reading books from Star Trek, any of the shows, but it also includes reading science books about astronomy, genetics. Physics would definitely tie in, as it had to do with all of that. See, it's always fun making those connections. I know, I'm that kind of a nerd. I also picked up a Clive Cussler. This is Hellburner. Haven't read that one yet. I've never read a Clive Cussler novel. It was a while back, someone was talking about a story, and I'm pretty sure I got confused, and I was thinking of the author, Clive Barker, who writes, I think his also come into the horror genre. So I'll need to double check that. This is a novel of the Oregon Files, and it's by Mike Madden. So I'm not sure. I may hang on to this for one of the booktube events, or I may just decide to pick it up and go for it. That would be along with John Grisham, The Appeal. I picked this particular one up for March Mystery Madness. So they may both end up waiting for that event. I haven't decided yet. Another book, and this was a rebuy, is Mitch Albom, and this is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Includes an excerpt of the long-awaited sequel, The Next Person You Meet in Heaven. I haven't read that one yet, but I have read this several times because it was a novel study in English classes that I was in, and I truly love this book. But I will be honest, it totally freaked me out the one year, because as we were doing this in English class, it fell into the time period of my birthday, We ended up having a code red in the building. I was sitting in a room with a friend of mine for a few hours. I'm thinking of this character passes away on his birthday. We had the SWAT team going through the school. We actually made the 6 o'clock news. And I was like, okay, this is just a little too creepy. And I will definitely never forget turning 51. That will be up there as a big memory for a long time. But the story of Eddie and the people that he meets and what he learns about his life, because initially he's thinking he didn't really do much. But as he comes across all these people, the five, that he was in touch with and the impact that he made and how other things spun out from all of that, it really is an excellent read. And I'm looking forward to reading this again. I just haven't picked it up yet. The last book that I have sitting waiting, and this again will be a read again, is Gods of the New Millennium. This is by Alan F. Alford. I read this prior to the big Y2K, people losing their minds and all of that. It's another reason I don't really get freaked out by prophecies and things. Like I said in a previous video, I've seen all the charlatans and it didn't end. Keep sending me money. I'll, hit the right day sometime. And I still haven't started, but I am looking forward to reading that book about the signs and that author's take on the Bible and all of that. So I find it fascinating to read about that type of stuff. I just don't believe it. There are a lot of different things I do, but that whole prophecy end times, not really. Especially after Y2K and people losing their minds that all these machines were going to freak out because they couldn't roll over to the year 2000. There were people storing food and all kinds of paranoia, yada, yada. Computer people were making big bucks going in and all these patches and everything else. And guess what? That New Year's Day rolled around. We woke up the next day and everything was fine. So, there you have it. Alan F. Alford, this book, as I say, I read it before. I actually finished his book before Zecharia Sitchin's The Earth Chronicles, which is a 6-volume series. Now, Zecharia spent 30 years pulling all his information together. And as I say, it's a 6-volume series. I have it in the other room on a shelf there that sits behind me. Alan Alford wrote his book after, and some of his work is based on Zecharia Sitchin's. Alan spent 10 years doing his research and tweaking and making changes to some of what Sitchin was saying. So they both have similar ideas. They've both used the Bible as reference points and making connections. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this again. As you can see, I've got some of my sticky notes going. I have an extra book here that I'll be making notes because I want to try and pool those two bits of information together, which also tie in with the Da Vinci spiral that I was on last year. So like I say, some of my reading, I have set goals. The one is to read what I own, which will likely never be finished because I keep buying more books. The next goal I set the fall, and that kind of got knocked off the rafters when I discovered the Wheel of Time. I began watching the series on Prime, found out it was based on books, got one of the box sets because they come in sets of 3. They're published by TOR. And, oh, here we have it. They're published by Tor Fantasy. The one thing, and I've mentioned this before, and this is why, sorry for people who keep your books immaculate, this, you have to crack the spine or you wouldn't be able to read that. They didn't leave very much space, and they definitely aren't used to people like me who highlight, leave notes, and all that kind of stuff in books. But I ended up reading the first 3 books because, of course, any new series now is only 8 episodes. And if you're really lucky, it might have more than 1 or 2 seasons. So I decided, instead of waiting until whenever this starts again, I ended up reading the entire series that year. I just need to finish the prequel. The following year, the goal that I had set after I reread the Da Vinci Code, because I've had the secrets of the code sitting and waiting for years, but I figured, well, that won't make sense if I don't read the Da Vinci Code again because it had been a while. That led into a spiral of over 50 plus books. Thankfully, the majority that I own, so some were rereads, some I finally got to them, like Zachariah Sitchin's Earth Chronicles, Graham Hancock's The Sign and the Seal, which has to do with the Ark of the Covenant. I, for the first time, even though I was born Roman Catholic, for the first time last year, I bought not 1, but 2 Bibles. And even though I've left that particular spiritual path, I'm glad that I did purchase the Bible. I find it a bit mind-blowing that it's on the banned book list, but, there's a lot of different things I've learned about that whole banned book, actually challenged books issue, because thankfully you can get all of those books. And yeah, I'm glad I did get copies of the Bible. I'll probably never read it front to back. It's, for me, very much a research tool. It has, I believe, parables. People like Eric von Daniken take things like that literally, and to each their own. And if it gives you comfort and helps you live a more peaceful and joyful life, I'm all for those types of books. I mean, everyone needs to find what makes sense for them. I no longer have a name for what I do. I'm, very much about the earth, taking care of plants, taking care of the animals, not just my fur babies inside, accepting people as people. To me, it doesn't matter. You know, we're humans, period. I don't know why people have to keep making this designation of, no, I'm this or I'm that. It's, you're human. Why can't we just leave it at that and get along peacefully? And if you believe something different from me, hey, if it works for you, that's great. I don't expect people to live their lives or make their choices or believe what I believe just because it works for me. You have to find what works for you. And personally, that's what I think it's all about. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree. The final thing that I did want to talk about, so I've talked about those TBRs and my reading things. And yes, this year I had a goal to continue with some things. Then I got caught up in the whole banned book issue, which spiraled out to woke and a lot of other things. So at the moment, I'm at 12 out of 24 with that. I'll be making a video about that because And sorry, I got to stretch out a bit. I'm going to put that on hold for now. It isn't that I'm not going to continue searching into the banned book issue or even reading some of the books I've enjoyed. The majority that I read were reading them again because they were either assigned in school when I was growing up, or I just came across them and they made a huge impact and difference for me. I'll be doing a video about that and why I'll be wrapping up the banned book project for a bit. Hopefully that video will be up next week. Now, on to what else I currently have and has kind of put some of my other reading aside. Now, there's always something, right? So, as I mentioned, I'm involved with Book Trek 2024. That was started by Vin at Revenant Reads. So, be sure to check him out. He has a video explaining all of it. I've also seen the videos read by Fred, who also talks about it. And I need to go to that hashtag Book Trek 2024, as there's a number of other channels also involved. I believe, boom. Now I can't think of it. I know Pat is involved. I know Ven is involved. So I'll have to make sure I add all of those tags below. So if you're a Star Trek fan, science fan, make sure you check all those channels out for the information. As I've mentioned before, when I heard about the event, all that I had was my Star Trek magazine that has oh so patiently been waiting for a year for me to read it. So off I went to my local thrift store to try and find books. And I found out that when you find them, you buy them because they go fast. So I found Probe. This is by Margaret Wander Beneno. Very much enjoyed the read. It goes on from movie number 4. So it was nice to get some closure and answers about the Probe. I've yet to start Star Trek Voyager Mosaic. This is by Jerry Taylor. And let me know in the comments down below, which is your favorite Star Trek? Mine, of course, is the original. I grew up in the 60s, so coming home from school was looking forward to a new Star Trek episode. It's definitely my favorite. Spock, for sure, is why I was interested in science and looking into those types of things. May even be why I got into psychology and trying to understand human emotions and choices. So thank you, Leonard Nimoy and Spock. Thank you, Gene Roddenberry, for sticking with it and getting that series on TV. But I also enjoyed Next Generation and Voyager, and those are pretty much, oh, wait, Deep Space Nine. I did watch a few of those, but it didn't quite get me the same as the other series did. But I did want to find some more Star Trek books. If you haven't seen my latest book haul, but you've seen some of my other videos, you know I was whining and complaining because I unhauled my original Star Treks. So this past Sunday, I had a little niggle to go to the thrift store, and there was the series, all but one. So I need to find log 9, but now I have plenty to keep me going through the summer. So excited and can't wait to start these again. But I have at least 8 books that I am currently in the process of reading, so I need to get some of those finished. I want to get back into reading the Celestine series, and I just picked up another book for that. let me know. Do you find that it's hard to decide where to start reading and what to pick up? So I'm trying to figure out an order. And part of what's helped me is planning ahead for some of the videos and topics. Book events have helped. I also found during my last shopping trip two more of the original Star Treks. I have Crisis on Centaurus that has to do with McCoy's daughter. My Enemy, My Ally. This has to do with the Romulans, so it will be interesting to see where things are at with this compared to where they were at in the probe. So that is a lot of what I'm currently going to be reading, working through, trying to get organized, and all of that. As I said, let me know if you have challenges trying to decide. Are you a what do I feel like reading today person? Do you have a set plan for what you're going to be reading? And I'm thinking that may be it for today. I see I've almost been babbling away for close to an hour. As I say, I'll upload this, so I'll be in the live when it goes up to answer any questions or comments. And I'm looking around. I've mentioned all of the books that I wanted to mention for today. As I said, be sure to check out Book Trek 2024. I know there's other events. There's June on the Range if you're someone who reads Westerns. I personally have never read a Western. When I was at the thrift store, I noticed they had a shelf of books, but at the moment, I just have way too many other books and projects that I need to get myself structured and on track. In any case, hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below whether you've read any of the authors or the subjects I've talked about. And until next time, be sure to take good care of yourself and take care.